Motoring 93 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil. And Midas for brake, exhaust, suspension, and steering service. Trust your car to Midas.
Welcome to the streets of New York City. I'm in Greenwich Village at the moment. It's a little quiet. Almost doesn't feel real, does it? Well, it isn't. You see, this week we're in the world of make-believe. This is the New York Street lot at Paramount Studios in Hollywood, California. And no, we're not here to go to the movies. We're here to talk about the future of the automobile, especially here in California. You see, in the year 1998, 2% of all vehicles sold in this state must be emission-free. That figure goes to 10% in the year 2003. But the question is, what will these cars look like and how will they be powered? Well, as you're about to see, Volvo believes it has the answer.
We're here at Paramount Studios today to take a look and actually drive the Volvo environmental concept car. It is a concept car in that it is showing some of the most advanced automotive technology that is environmentally responsible for the future, but it's also a running vehicle, not simply a kind of a laboratory queen. And we've gotten about 50 journalists throughout the US and Canada to come down and drive it.
Well, originally our goal was to have a zero-emitting vehicle to go by the California legislature. However, as we got into it, we found that electric was just not going to make it. Mainly because we found that consumers just couldn't handle some of its shortcomings. So as we went through this whole project, we were trying to marry the desires of the customer together with what California is setting forth as rule. So the hybrid gave us an opportunity to run the vehicle on batteries only when you are in a city center situation. However, if your fancy so dictated and you wish to take the family out to San Diego or Santa Barbara or Las Vegas, you can still do that with a gas turbine engine in a series with the electric motor. We can do that. So we felt we had the best of both worlds.
The vehicle that you see here today has been less than 2 years from the first time we would think of a pencil touching the paper. But in fact, there was no pencil and no paper. This car was all designed on a computer screen. And actually, the computer program that was responsible for all of the design work came out of a Canadian company called Alias. And it was all three-dimensionally designed on a computer screen. And the numerical coding that came out of that initial design was then used to machine the first parts for the car all automatically. I mean, there were no drawings, no clay models. It went from a three-dimensional piece of modeling on a computer screen literally to hardware.
The concept car has the same basic platform as the Volvo 850. The inner structure and body are aluminum, which Volvo claims reduces the mass of the car by 12% compared with corresponding steel body cars.
How do you do something that people are actually going to buy and put on the road? Because that's, as Stephen Wallman said earlier, that's when you start to get effective cleanup, is when it replaces old cars. So you have to make something that's attractive for people to buy and that they'll really want to buy. And I wanted to stay away from an environmental car which looked like some small kind of niche car, a very wild showcase for my own design creativity. That was kind of out because it has to appeal to a wide number of people. It has to appeal to traditional Volvo buyers, at the same time as hopefully draw in other customers that are interested in more dynamically appearing cars, cars that have more of an aesthetic sensitivity about them. Internal Volvo, as well as Volvo customers, have now become a bit bored with the boxy the boxiness of Volvos. They were quite pleased that a fresh look could be arrived at and still seem to say to them Volvo. I don't think you look at the car and call it it doesn't look like a Japanese car, it doesn't look like an American car, it doesn't really look like a German car. Yeah, because the world car market is so influenced by each other now, someone with a cold eye might say that looks like a BMW. But in general, it ties together all of the traditional Volvo elements that have been used in the past into a contemporary package.
Well, in terms of direct environmental issues, it's simply a matter of using materials that are from renewable resources, such as leather. The cork is harvested from trees, etc. The substructures for the dashboard and so on are all of recyclable or commonly recyclable same-use plastics. The major concept of the interior really is less of an environmental issue, but addresses more the family and safety attributes of the Volvo product. Specifically, all of the features and controls are either very, very conventional, so they're where you want them to be and they're the way you expect them to be, or they're very advanced in a way that helps you to keep your eyes on the road. So most of them are what we call eyes-free controls. And the three-dimensional characteristics of the interior, the sculpture and the detail work, is all to reinforce that, to allow you to find things without looking and to use them repeatedly without looking.
Its versatility will make it far more attractive. People are not wild about taking on new technology, the rotary engine, whatever. It takes time to adopt new technology. So if you were told that this car is going to act just like any car that's running on the road today, you have that assurance that I'm not doing anything wild or crazy, and this car will deliver what any other car will do, except it runs very clean. Very, very clean. It's an ultra low emitting vehicle based on our calculations in the hybrid mode, or zero emitting in the electric mode. And if you're at all concerned with the environment, and I believe we are, and many, many more of us are becoming far more aware of the damage we're doing to our planet, then why not?
How clean are today's cars? Well, we'll take you to Sweden, where SAAB conducted an extraordinary test to demonstrate the ability of the SAAB Trionic system to digest exhaust gases. A sensor in the exhaust pipe is used to measure the composition of the exhaust gases, the content of carbon monoxide in percent, and the content of hydrocarbons in parts per million or ppm of the total exhaust gas quantity. The exhaust gases discharged by the car with the Trionic system contain 0.01% carbon monoxide and 10 ppm of hydrocarbons. The corresponding emissions from a 1950 vintage two-stroke SAAB 92 using a fuel oil mixture are about 1.5% carbon monoxide and over 2,000 ppm of hydrocarbons. But now things get real interesting when a hose is connected to the old SAAB's tailpipe. Immediately, the Trionic system senses the infringement as the dirty gas flows into the manifold and adapts its performance to the new conditions. Then, unbelievably, the exhaust gases from the Trionic car revert to their original values. The system has practically purified the emissions. In fact, the emissions not only meet, but are actually under the upcoming California requirements.
We're back on the streets of New York City at Paramount Studios in Hollywood, California. And everything looks so real. But it isn't. This is a city built with something they call vacuum form. It's all a facade. Everything is a fake. Everything. Well, it's time to leave Hollywood and join a man who deals only in the real world. And that's Bill Gardner.
Well, Brad, you hit on one of my pet peeves, and that's realism. So really all I watch on TV is TSN and the news at night. And the other night I was watching the news, and I see Bob Rae, the Premier of Ontario, the province I live in, at a businessman's convention, and they end the segment by saying that Premier Rae is looking for input from the public sector as to how he should kickstart the economy. Well, I don't have every answer about the recession and the economy, but I have got 4 specific proposals for Premier Rae today that relate to my industry, the automotive industry. Okay, we know Mr. Rae's looking to generate some more revenue. We've got a big deficit in Ontario. First thing I propose is that residents of Northern Ontario start to pay their fair share when it comes to license stickers. Currently they're paying 0. They get their license renewal stickers for their plates absolutely free. In Southern Ontario, in the metro area, we pay $90 a year. Outside of that area, they pay $66 a year. And as soon as you get to Parry Sound, Nipissing, Sudbury, etc., anywhere in Northern Ontario, you're paying 0. And that's just not right. It costs a lot of money to maintain those roads up there as well, and I don't think it's right that they pay nothing. Second of all, they need to index the license sticker price to the engine size. Now, you probably remember a few years ago when there used to be a 4, 6, and 8 cylinder price. That's all gone now. It's one price across the board. What I suggest is that we index it to the displacement of the engine. Up to 2-liter engines would pay $80 a year. 2 to 4-liter engines, which is a lot of your larger 4 cylinders and small V6 engines, $150 a year. 4 to 5-liter engines, which is larger V6s and small V8s, would pay $200 a year. 5 to 6.5-liter engines, which is full-size cars and many light trucks, would pay $250 a year. And over 6.5 liters, which is those old turkeys, the big 400 cubic inch engines and above, $400 a year as an incentive to get people to get those old gas guzzlers off the road. Third, the gas guzzler tax as it currently applies is not a good system. It should either be scrapped or changed so that it's only on cars over 5 liters or trucks over 5.8 liters. Currently there's a lot of what I consider quite fuel efficient cars being penalized with a guzzler tax. And fourth, and most importantly, a 1-year sales tax holiday on vehicles built in Ontario. Now this could be expanded to vehicles built in Canada, but I'm suggesting a 1-year holiday on the sales tax in order to get people to buy vehicles built here in Ontario. And there's a lot of good vehicles built here. If you're looking for a compact car, you could have a Civic, a Tempo, a Topaz, a Firefly, a Corolla, all built in Ontario. In the intermediates, you've got the Lumina and Regal built in Oshawa. Full-size cars, you've got the Chrysler LHs in Bramalea and the full-size Ford vehicles. In pickup trucks, you've got the Chevy and GMC full-size trucks in Oshawa and the Ford pickup in Oakville. In vans, you'd have a choice of the Chrysler Magic Wagon from Windsor, the GM full-size from Scarborough, Ontario, and in the not-too-distant future, the Ford Villager that's supposed to be built in the Oakville plant. Now, I don't propose to have all the answers to our economic problems, but I think some of my proposals are workable, and I just want to give you a perfect example. My 1980 pickup truck, which was built in Oakville, Ontario, as you can see, it's due to be replaced. That's the tailgate off it, and there's not much left. So all it would take for me to get out there and buy a new truck would be a little bit of a push. So how about it, Bob? How about that sales tax holiday? That'd get guys like me away from fixing this garbage and out buying new stuff that's more fuel efficient. And I'll guarantee you there'll be a big lineup behind me. Next week I'll be off my soapbox and back under the hood. Till then, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 93.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
When you talk family sedans, a word that comes to mind all too often is boring. Well, this week on Test Drive, we look at a family sedan that is anything but. In fact, I've been like a kid in a candy store so far with this car. Now, this is the 1993 Taurus SHO.
At the heart of the Taurus SHO is a totally new powertrain. The super high output engine, hence the SHO designation, produces 220 horses and 215 pounds-feet of torque. The difference being that the engine in the automatic SHO now displaces 3.2 litres. In order to attain the same sort of performance that the original manual SHO offered, Ford engineers bored the 3-litre engine out to 3.2 litres. The result is more torque at lower RPM. This means that this new engine is particularly well suited to the 4-speed automatic transmission. In terms of out-and-out performance, the automatic version loses nothing when compared to the manual car. Now that's something of a rarity.
It's time for my favourite bit on test drive, especially with this car, because we're going to run it up to 100k, so hang on to your hats. And there you have it. We've just gone through the 100k mark in about 6.1 seconds, which for a family sedan is unbelievable. Man, no wonder I want to drive one of these cars as my own car. The only thing people will notice about this car is that the engine noise becomes rather apparent as you get up into the rev range. Now, to some it will be annoying, but to the vast majority its sweet song will be music to the ears. During the test I averaged a good 24 miles per gallon or 11.7 litres per 100 kilometres. The suspension on the SHO automatic is, as one might expect, firm, but that is not to say uncomfortable. Indeed, I found it to be the perfect blend between ride and handling. This SHO is handling the pylon test so easily, it's a cakewalk for it. And unlike so many other front-wheel drive cars, this thing isn't at all nose heavy. When we did the Maxima, it plowed terribly. This thing is handling almost as well as the 325i, which was the fastest car we've ever taken through the pylon test. In short, a stellar job. The other item worthy of note are the Eagle GA tyres. They provide copious amounts of grip without being at all noisy. This SHO comes with anti-lock brakes, and this little demonstration will show you exactly why they are so good. 2 wheels on snow, 2 on tarmac, hit the brakes and the car comes to a stop in a perfectly straight line. Without anti-lock brakes we would have done a 180 and quite even a 360. During the brake test we required just 118 feet to stop from 80k. The top brass at Ford have dubbed the automatic SHO the Executive Express. Now, having verified the Express portion of that nickname, it's time to see if the interior lives up to the Executive bit. Inside, the SHO is well appointed. You'll find a complete set of power options including mirrors, locks and windows, as well as 6-way power seats for both front passengers. Now, these seats also feature adjustments for lumbar support and 2 huge side bolsters that provide the much needed lateral support. Unfortunately, in today's society, personal security has become an issue. Now, on the SHO, Ford have addressed that by adding a panic button to this remote. When you hit the button, all hell breaks loose. Now, the noise that thing generates should be enough to dissuade any would-be attacker and at least draw attention to your dilemma. The other thing, if you do happen to lose the car in the parking lot, it happens to be a mighty fine way of finding the car. The dash is clean, clear and analog in configuration, meaning that all information can be picked up at a glance when travelling at speed, something you have a tendency to do rather a lot of in this car. Just above and to the left of the climate controls are 3 auxiliary radio control buttons. They need these buttons because the radio is housed far too low down in the dash. The other thing is that despite the enormous aerial, AM reception is awful. Someone needs to trim the aerial to the radio. In the rear there is plenty of head and legroom and enough space for 3 adults. The trunk is simply enormous and therefore capable of carrying an entire family's luggage, but the lack of split folding seats is unacceptable in today's market. My pet peeve on the SHO is very simple. Every time you engage drive, this thing automatically locks all 4 doors. Now, when the driver gets out, that's not a problem because every time you reef on the handle, it automatically unlocks this door. But when you go to get groceries out of the back, this one's still locked. Now, why they wouldn't use the technology to unlock the doors that they're using to lock them is beyond me. Now, if they're telling me that this is a security issue, we've got the panic button. Leave the darn things unlocked. I know if I buy the car, I'm going to remove that module. Well, that's it for this week's test drive, except to say that I've got permission from She Who Must Be Obeyed to buy one of these things. The only thing I've got to wait for now are my lottery numbers. Next week on Test Drive, we look at the Eagle Summit.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns brake fluid. It's a pretty simple task to check the brake fluid level and condition on any of today's cars. Most of today's cars have a see-through plastic reservoir on their brake cylinders. You can see the brake fluid actually sloshing around if you jiggle the car. So keep this area clean and then you won't have to be constantly removing the cap to check that fluid level. Now, if you do have to remove the cap, make sure that you clean this area. You don't want any dirt to drop inside the cylinder. Don't overfill it. and make sure that if you do have to add to it, you add brake fluid from a clean, sealed container. One of the key properties of brake fluid is a high boiling point, and if it's exposed to the air, it absorbs moisture out of the atmosphere, out of the air, and that lowers its boiling point. And that's one of the main things that allows brake fluid to protect the system as it does. Now, if you've got an older car with a metallic cylinder like this one, you're going to have a little clip over the top, and you're going to have to flip it off with a screwdriver. Now, this cylinder has a metallic lid as well. You can lay it over and set it aside. You may have to repack this bladder. If the fluid level has gone low, you'll have to fold it back into position. Make sure that the sealing area is clean and this top ledge is clean. And again, on this cylinder, do not overfill it, no more than 1/8 below the rim. And make sure that the brake fluid is periodically replaced in the car, even if it doesn't look bad, because it will, over time, absorb moisture out of the air, as I said before, and lower its boiling point. If you happen to be driving in a mountainous area, you could lose your brakes on a long downgrade. Good rule of thumb, change the brake fluid at every brake job, completely replace it, and bleed the brakes with new, clean fluid. That's your Midas tip of the week.
How exotic can a concept car be with a 2-cylinder engine? I'll tell you when I come back in Kenzie's Corner.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
Auto shows, they're great fun for car enthusiasts. Now, most of the cars here you can buy and drive on the street. But to a lot of people, the attraction of an auto show is the concept cars. These are cars which tell us what they're going to be like in the future. Now, in the good old days, concept cars were high-performance luxury cars. Thousands of horsepower, hundreds of miles per hour, completely impractical, but a lot of fun. However, in today's day and age, fuel economy, safety, and efficiency are more important, and you end up with concept cars like this AVX4 over here. Now, this is a little Toyota that, believe it or not, weighs less than 1,000 pounds. I'll let you figure out how many kilograms that is, and yet it can get almost 100 miles to the gallon. The car's got an aluminum honeycomb chassis, it's got magnesium seat frames, it's got a 2-stroke, 2-cylinder engine that's supercharged, and it gives it plenty of performance for today's highways. What's keeping us from driving cars like this? Primarily, it's safety considerations. A little car like this is very difficult to meet our very stringent crash tests, and yet a car like this with an airbag is probably every bit as safe as the car you're driving today. Besides, if all safety regulations are doing is keeping alive drunks and people that don't know how to drive, I say, let them go, let them burn. All of us are dying because of the fuel problems and the carbon dioxide created by inefficient automobiles. If we're all driving something like this, we'd all be a whole lot safer. So I say to Toyota and the rest of the car makers of the world, let's build something like this that we can actually buy. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, here's your final look, at least for now, at the Volvo ECC concept vehicle. Will we see this car in the future? Well, we'll have to wait at least until 1998 or 2003, but I do have a suggestion for Volvo. Why not drop a regular engine into this car right now? I think they would quickly begin attracting some new customers. That's it for now. We'll see you next week for more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
Motoring 93 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil. And Midas. For brake, exhaust, suspension, and steering service, trust your car to Midas.